From the Green Room Studios at Bates Nursery in Nashville, Tennessee, it's Gardening Inside Out, a podcast with highlights from our Saturday morning live show, answering all your gardening questions, giving you plant advice for any space in your life. Let's start the show.
Hello, everyone. It's Caroline Gant.
And hello, everyone. It's Austin Lowen.
Hey, what's up? It's Tyler.
Hey, what's up, Tyler?
You just have to be different, don't you?
I mean, I'm just me, y'all.
You are just you, and I appreciate it, and don't ever change.
That's right. I'm just me,
Don't
too.
plan on it.
We're all ourselves.
I'm not really myself today, because you know what?
You're down because of the weather.
This weather's awful.
Y'all should see Austin when it's raining.
I hate it.
You do.
My
You're
feet
like
get wet.
a sad cat.
I am.
Has to go outside.
Oh, that's so accurate.
It's not even raining days.
It's like the way he's like hunched up and hating it.
Yeah.
The face.
It's an awful mist, and it's kind of chilly. It's relentless today. It's hurting me.
I'm sorry.
Inside and out. Hey.
Oh,
Yeah, that worked.
you brought it back around to the show. Well, I'm
Whoa,
glad you're
Austin,
here today.
that was incredible.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
I did that on purpose. No, I didn't.
Well, I missed you guys on Saturday.
We
I was
did.
sick.
You were sick.
I was.
Ooh.
I came in and then I went home.
And, yeah, you leaned in the doorway and you're like, "Hi,
I'm
bye."
going now. Drove all the way here. I just wanted to see your faces because I knew I'd miss you.
We appreciate your dedication.
Yeah, always.
I had not seen you sick in a while. You don't get sick very often.
I don't.
You
Rare.
were rough. I could tell.
But I still drove here
I know. I don't know
Yeah.
why you did that.
because I'm it's in my routine to do it.
It's true.
Yeah.
All right. What's going on around town with plants?
They're all going to sleep.
They
That's what's
are.
happening.
You know, red maples look fabulous right now.
That's true.
I feel like they've been a little slower, but they have held onto their leaves and they're like torches. So if you're seeing like a big red torch around town in places, I can think of near East Side Bowl. There's a lot in East Nashville, like the Clio. This is for the people who live in Nashville.
Yeah.
Go drive around town. I'm not sure about anywhere else.
You know what I notice about this time of year?
We have them.
Whenever all the leaves, or at least 90% of them, drop off the trees, I notice all these different like houses and things that I'd never noticed before until the leaves fall. And then you can see through the woods and you're like, oh, there's a house back there.
There's a house right off
like-
the interstate. Yep.
Yeah. Like I can see the road or the interstate over there when I've never been able to do that.
I can see my neighbors that
Yes.
live behind me. I don't like that.
It's what I imagine like living out west might feel like, where you just have this unobstructed view forever of things.
You see it all.
Yeah.
Now, ours
It
is
is kind
not
of exciting.
unobstructed. I mean, it's still
Sticky.
very stemmy, very
Stemmy.
sticky.
Very stemmy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that. So it's kind of blurry to see through it. But yeah, I see all sorts of new things that I haven't seen.
Look
Yeah.
at you finding the positive in everything on
Always.
this rainy, sad day.
Well, I do enjoy it. It's like a different dynamic change.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, it's nice.
Although for some of you who like your privacy, you might mind it.
Yeah.
And we definitely hear a lot from y'all on the lot about that. And that's why we definitely steer towards things that do keep their foliage in the winter.
I would say probably top 5 questions asked at our garden center is, I've got a neighbor that I want to block out, but I don't really want them to know I'm blocking them out. So they try to be
So the
subtle
trees
about it.
won't be obvious at all.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I'm like, I can't help you there. Like, if you want to plant trees, sure, but your neighbors are probably going to notice.
They're gonna
that.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure the neighbors will appreciate it too. Because
You're
they
right,
don't have
probably.
to invest anything in it
Yeah,
or
the
do
neighbor-
any kind of work.
I feel like it could go both ways. There are some neighbors who are like, "Oh, you don't like us," and they're like not so confident or whatever. And then others who are like, "Yeah, this needed to happen."
This is a good break.
You know, what great initiative, neighbor.
And Caroline's right. You know, the neighbor doesn't have to do any work or spend any money. So they're like, yeah, great.
They get a beautiful green screen and they don't have to do anything.
I tell you what, though, let's talk about like ideal versus reality. Sometimes I planted 4 oak leaf hydrangea.
I remember when you planted that. There was
Yeah.
a storm coming. It was like 3 years ago.
I planted it like crazy. Like the
last.
last one, I barely packed in the ground before it rained. Well, fast forward, was it nearly 2 years later now? 2 are dead. And they were the ones that actually weren't directly underneath the shade. They get afternoon sun. So yeah, it's a trying location, but like, and I was thinking, oh yeah, they'll be grown up in no time and I'll be screening my neighbors out.
You're not screening them, are you?
No, they're probably like 2.5, 3 feet tall right now.
But they're cute.
They're cute. Yes, I love the color on them at the moment. But by no means their dogs are still running into my yard, like, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe I picked the wrong plant.
You might have.
Let's discuss that, you know.
I'm a big fan of just grasses as a screen, even though there's a good month or two where they're no longer a screen in the spring when they're growing. But you can't go wrong with them. I was talking to Austin about my switchgrass today, actually.
I like that as a screen too. It's just kind of a short screen. So if you need something taller, you know, it's an issue. But you're right. I love grasses. I mean, I think we all love that.
We
I
talked
think
about
everyone
that.
knows how much we love them on this show.
We did have that clean versus dirty debate though. And if your partner is one that doesn't like the dead stems up and it's going to bother him, that is the only downside of grass. But I don't really consider it a downside, and I think that's the majority here.
I almost like it better in the winter.
Yeah.
It makes noise when it blows.
I just like that it changes. Like I'm a fan of change in the landscape. And Tennessee is definitely a place to get it.
We've got all the seasons here. And
Yeah.
they're all gorgeous. They're all special in their own way.
It's true.
Just like you, our viewers and listeners.
That's right.
Yes.
Just like every single one of you out there listening.
That's great.
Are y'all doing any projects in your garden? I know Austin's got, his boxwood debacle that's still ongoing. He's got some ideas. I don't know if he wants to talk about those, but
Well, I could talk, but Austin, do you want to say anything? Mm-mm. Okay.
he's
I'm
going to
still
keep it as
waiting.
a surprise. I'm just
It's
cleaning my beds.
Yeah, that's about all you can do, I guess, right now. I mean, pruning still, obviously, that's got to get done soon, I guess, if you want to prune.
I planted some hydrangeas the other day.
Well,
What kind?
I don't know. They didn't have tags.
Great.
So I don't really know what kind. You know me.
Caroline with the mystery flavor.
Oh, yeah. I'll know what they are next spring or
Right.
summer when they start blooming.
You will just plant anything.
I
know
will.
You will.
And I'll move them around.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you regret it, you'll just move it.
I'll just move it.
You know, I've never moved a plant that I've planted in the ground.
You know how many I've moved?
20,000.
Exactly. How did you guess that number correctly? 20,000 plants. Wow.
Yeah. That's a conservative estimate, too, I bet.
Probably.
I remember, I'm not too big on moving things either, but Sarah, my partner, will sometimes be like, you know what, this really isn't working for me. And I'm like, well, it's working for me, but it does, it's like, okay, it's got to go. And then I realize once we find a new place, it's not that bad. It's not the end of the world.
No.
It's not.
And you didn't have to buy a new plant.
And it's still,
You got a new design.
yeah.
Look.
And I just didn't realize they were that movable. Now I know it's not the best thing to do.
I just moved so many things a couple
They're
weeks ago.
usually fine.
But after
It's usually
a season, they usually just, okay, I'm over here now, unless you plant them in the wrong conditions.
Yeah.
I know since it's audio only, you guys can't see Austin's face right now, but the look of disappointment about us moving plants around,
Oh, it is. I
it
guess-
hurts me.
it does.
Not because of the plant. It's just like, I don't really like digging holes in the first place. Yeah, I'm a gardener. I like beauty, and I think I've achieved that pretty well in my house. I'm ongoing. I'm always working on it. But the only thing I hate worse than digging one hole is digging something back up and
Digging
digging
another
another hole.
It's exercise. I love it.
Plant it in the right
You're a
spot first.
purposeful gardener.
Yes.
Well, my mind changes, so
I know. I get it. And that happens with a lot of people.
People change, man.
I know of a woman that is so she doesn't know where to put stuff so much, or she overthinks it and thinks about it so hard that she literally just puts plants in areas in their pots. She doesn't plant them. She just puts them in their pots, and then she puts mulch on top of the pot so it looks like they're kind of planted.
I love this
And she see
idea.
if she likes it there for a little while before she tries to move it again and stuff.
Brilliant.
that's pretty brilliant. If
It's a good idea
If
if
you
you're
don't
that-
want to commit and you don't want to have to replant, that's a fantastic idea.
It's not bad. You're right. I mean, it's better than digging a hole and slamming it in there and then having to dig it back up.
I've done that with some houseplants before. I've kind of sunk them in the ground in their pots and then brought them up to bring them in the winter.
Yeah,
And it works.
It prevents
their own.
double work,
that's
Yeah.
right.
at least up front.
and then you can put something else in that hole.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Seasonal gardening at its finest.
Well, a while back, Austin, you said the P word, pruning. And that is something that I did kind of randomly before work on Sunday. I don't know. It was the coffee, the quality of the coffee that I had, but I just got into focus mode.
Yep.
I might have taken a Claritin.
Oh,
You know
you're-
how that helps. And I just went out in my garden. I was like, that needs to be cleaned up. That needs to be pruned. And it was observation. I cut back my hardy hibiscus. I cut back my agastaki that was all bloomed out and crusty.
Yep.
And it felt so good.
It does. I do love to prune. Absolutely love. You get in the zone. It's kind of like painting. It takes forever to get started, but once you do, it's like you're in the zone.
Yeah.
You're flowing. You're cutting that straight line.
You're
Yeah.
good at it.
Oh, I love to prune.
Yep.
It's so good.
Did a little tropical watering to kind of break it up for a second, you know,
Okay. Tropical
in the
watering.
greenhouse.
Ooh, tropical watering.
How would you call it?
Yeah.
That's what I do here every day.
Pour yourself
tropical
some
watering.
Hawaiian
That's right.
punch.
And get to some tropical watering. Hey, do you guys talk about pruning on the broadcast that I missed?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably.
We had pruning flowering almond. That was one. We had another pruning question.
Yeah, we had Colin in today to listen to, or we talked to Colin today. He was on the lot. Come shopping with us. He's an avid listener
Yeah, it
of
was
ours.
great to see him.
He sent in a picture and a photo. He pictured in a
He pictured
photo.
up a photo to us.
He did that of a real big holly on the corner of his home, and he asked, "How in the world do I prune this?" And it's an excellent question because the plant was getting taller than his house. So we went through that. That was cool. It's good to see Colin. Shout out Colin. What up?
What up, Colin?
What up, Colin? All right. Well, I'm itching to see what you guys talked about without me there. So let's get into it. What was this? What was the date? Saturday, November 18th, I believe.
18th.
Okay.
All right.
The day Caroline was sick.
The day Caroline, the one day Caroline was sick.
She's ever been sick.
All right. Here we go.
Enjoy.
Okay, well, before we get into the questions, and we know we've got some out there, let's just kind of talk about what we've observed this week. What are people saying that we're talking to directly here at the Garden Center? And what are the questions that you're experiencing most frequently here on the lot?
Oh, what would you say? A lot of people itching to prune. That's for sure.
Oh, we have pruning questions.
Well, the biggest thing for me is a lot of people have been asking me, when do I prune my grasses? I'm like, well, you need to wait if you can. If you got to prune them, go ahead. But we really recommend you wait till late winter, early spring.
It's just, I mean, that's part of the beauty of them is letting that.
Yeah, I think so.
Letting them go dry, let the seed heads mature. Let them blow in the wind. You know, you get that little bit of movement. It's all. I don't know if you get sound effects or not, Josh, but I'm a fan of leaving things that have any kind of a flower or seed head on them up during the winter months. At least if it's really wet and they start looking bad, where they begin to decay, then perhaps. Most of the time, and it looks like perhaps for this winter, we're not going to have excessive amount of moisture, so it's unlikely that it's going to be necessary from that standpoint.
Yeah.
There's another development is that we've moved up to Zone B.
Oh,
in
7B.
most-
7B.
7B, sorry. In most of Middle Tennessee now, and
Which
we
means
were originally
nothing.
7A. Yes, nothing, but you know, it's
a little something.
We should worry about it, though.
Well, what it means is when someone's reading a tag, it says this plant is hardy to zone blank, that gives you a frame of reference. However, zone rating or category has zero effect on what the weather actually does.
Yeah.
Last winter was a great example of that. We were 60 degrees in the afternoon and 5 below 5 hours later. So that's a really bad outcome right there, and everyone had to endure that one.
Yep.
Hopefully, we don't ever see that again. But the hardiness zone maps really don't cover that aspect of cold weather. The damage that was done with respect to that spell was due to the rapid nature of it, and that plants had not had an opportunity to completely harden off for winter. They were somewhat, but
Right.
the amount of damage on broadleaves was indicative that they were not hardened.
Well, I
off.
would say that that there is a little bit to it because, and you're correct, David, as far as like if we had -5, but we had had 10 degrees or 15 degrees for 3 or 4 weeks before that, it probably would not have been as big a deal. But there are plants that people buy here that would have been affected by -5.
Certainly.
And so that's where I get a little miffed with where the map is, because it can be a little misleading. So
So let me just ask here. This means, so we moved to 7B. That means that
5 degrees.
So 5 degrees
Yes.
difference. So this is saying that we typically don't get less than 5
Correct.
degrees here. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Correct.
It used to be 0 to -5, right? or just 0?
It used to be 0,
Okay,
which is
so-
7A.
And to back up
Okay.
even further, I would say it was in maybe the early 80s or later 70s that the A-B zone split occurred, where we used to be zone 7.
Yeah.
And there was no A-B zone split, but then they did finally acknowledge that, hey, you know what, we need to do a 5-degree separation on this.
So what did they do to us in the mid 80s when it was 17 degrees below zero?
But they look at the data
Okay.
over a statistical time period. So
Okay.
a single year event, you would say, well, gosh, last year it should
Darn.
have. Why did we move to a higher zone when we had lower temperatures? Well, it's because it's a singular event.
Yeah.
And it's also, I believe that meteorological data gets incorporated and confused into the horticultural data. I think that's just the way that the data is
We need to
collected.
have congressional hearings about this and find out what's going on.
Certainly, that it's that level of importance.
It
no
is,
question.
absolutely.
I bet we got questions.
I bet we got a lot of
We
questions.
certainly do, and I will do my best to fill in with Caroline's charm.
Well, you
but
won't be able to do
I
that.
won't
There's
be able to fill
way
those
too
shoes.
much
But you can read
testosterone
the
in this
questions,
room
though.
today.
That's right. So, is it okay to plant new trees right next to where I've removed old trees and ground the stumps?
We get this question a lot.
Yep.
And it's a good question. I mean, and I typically say, like, if you can get it away from the exact spot of where you remove the old stump, because right where you have the old stump, what do you have? Just a whole bunch of sawdust, pretty much, so you don't necessarily want to plant in that.
No.
You really want to get it in soil if you can. So if you have to put it in the exact same spot, then you really need to remove as much of that sawdust as you can and add back in maybe some of our Earth Mix Garden, to get it back to dirt so you can actually plant it in soil. But other than that, if you can get it away from that spot just a little bit, then that's ideal.
Well, you will encounter roots, though.
Oh, you're going to.
Close to it.
That's hard digging.
I had a 120-year-old sugar maple that was declining in our front yard, and it was obvious. We did everything we could to save it over about a decade, and ultimately we knew it had to come out. Well, you got a major spot where that you've got root system and various stage of decay of the bark. We did have it ground out, all the stump as much as possible, but it had been planted too close to the house originally, so we wanted to move it away some. And that's the other thing that you get to do on these things is you get to put things in a better spot. But I also had a friend, Dan Canancer, come out with his track hoe and excavate the spot and dig through
As many as he could find.
well, he got a lot of the stump out
Yeah.
that was still left in there, plus roots that were in the way. And then I brought in actual topsoil to put underneath, because Earth Mix Garden's a great product for planting, but you don't really want to fill that in underneath because of the amount of
Settling,
organic content that's in it. It will settle. So if you put just good topsoil underneath to create a pedestal for that root ball to get it up elevated, then you can put the other around it and the roots can grow into that without the danger of it settling. So
And guys, they still have these things called rakes and leaf blowers. So, I mean, if you rake as much of that stuff away anyway, because you're going to get some nitrogen fixation with it as well, right?
well,
I mean, after it'll rot right in the ground. I had a guy tell me that one time. So,
yeah, I had a guy who ground stumps out to tell me that you could plant
right in it.
tomato plants in it and they would produce tomatoes as big as your head. I go, that's why you're an arborist and I'm a horticulturalist. I said, we're going to differ on this one, and I didn't.
they're the same guy.
I didn't call BS, but I was thinking it really loud.
Well, he probably has that same crew that plants the pansies right on top of the charcoal mulch. And, and puts
Possibly.
it all, I mean, he's the same guy. Anyway, I wouldn't do it. I'd get it as much away from it as possible, waste it away, put it into its own compost pile.
So the point of all this is you can get it pretty close, but there are some very specific things you've got to do to be able to create the situation so that the tree can do well. By the way, I planted an autumn blaze, a 15-gallon autumn blaze red maple in my yard. It was about 1.25 inch caliper, and I think that's been 5 years ago. It is almost 7 inches.
Wow.
In diameter now, and it's
That's that silver maple blood kicking in. With the autumn
absolutely.
leaves.
And you know, where me being a late stage kind of a guy, I didn't want to go with sugar maple, something that was that slow of growing, because I wouldn't get to see much growth out of it. So it's not reasonable to expect anyway. So anyway, the Autumn Blaze maple has been a very satisfactory selection, and it's a very fast growing, symmetrical, and good color.
It was, well, imagine, yeah.
Albeit brief on the color. They really defoliate fast.
Let's move over to fertilizing. What fertilizer is best on violas? Just biotone when planting? Is blood meal helpful?
Yes.
Yes, but any of it's helpful for sure. But I will say we sell a product here that's just called premium bedding food. Okay, it's like what's the numbers? I think it's like 72213 or something like that.
Wow.
That middle number is fairly high, and it is a synthetic. It's not an organic, but it is so easy to get your bed prepped. Broadcast this over the whole top of the earth. Plant your violas and your pansies on top, and then water it in really well. It's an excellent fertilizer. Those numbers are really, really good. I use it every single time I plant pansies, even in pots. Even in containers. You know, fill it up with dirt, put the bedding food on top, and then planting right into it, and then watering really well. It's a good one. I'm telling you.
You can also you can use flower tone as well if you want to go organic. But what I would suggest is maybe go with twice what the bag says, because it's organic. You're not really going to overdo it if you only do it like twice as much.
Well, flower tone is from the Espoma line.
Correct.
Yes.
It's all blood meal, bone meal, that kind of thing. So, but it's pretty low number.
And particularly for the flowers, the middle number is the important
Correct.
one, right?
And even if you're using something like Earth Mix Supernatural, which is an organic compost that you could either top dress or incorporate into the existing soil before you plant, those are all very good. None of those can possibly burn that are on the organic side. It's just not possible. There's not enough. There's the amount of ammoniacal nitrogen is not existent, so they don't flash. It's a very controlled release of nitrogen, phosphate, potash.
Okay, let's bring it down to the dumb guy. Okay. The chemical ones are probably going to work a little quicker than the
and maybe last a little longer.
Okay.
But you do not get the microbial action. You don't get the additive benefits to the soil that last for a long time.
Right. Okay.
And I typically, Josh, just to clear it up, I typically use the synthetics like I was talking about for those short season crops. Okay, so those ones that we're just using pansies over the winter to get us to spring.
Right.
Okay, so that's kind of, and the big key too we have to talk about is that a lot of fertilizers are not activated if temperatures are not still where they need to be heat wise. So like, roughly in that 65, 75 degree range, it's really when we want to plant pansies too. So getting them in early enough to where the fertilizer is actively working.
And is that not the biggest fight we wage, is trying to convince people to yank summer annuals and get cool season stuff in? Everyone wants to wait, and they don't want to cut them back. And they want, and because we've talked about on this program, and we do pretty much every day to folks about leggy pansies or other leggy annuals, you've got to cut them back in order to induce branching, or else they're going to flop. But people don't want to buy blooms and cut them off.
Well, I had a landscaper come in yesterday, and he had some pansies he didn't get from here. I'm not going to say where he got them from, but they were real leggy. And he was like, "What do I do?" I was like, "Well, just cut them back. Cut them halfway back. They'll be fine."
You have to.
Yeah.
And he said, "What?
He said,
I can't do that. The customers
flowers, man.
Wants to see color.
Correct.
Customers never look at the plant; they only look at the blooms. It'll be covered in blooms, but as leggy as can be, and they'll still buy that one over like a really tight, perfect looking plant with no blooms on it. And that ain't me. That ain't us. We're buying the green flats that don't have flowers. I mean, if the plant is happy and green and healthy, it will bloom, y'all.
And look closely for buds. They're likely there.
Exactly.
Gardening Inside Out is brought to you by Earth Mix Garden Products, creating regionally sourced high-quality soil blends and amendments for the sustainable-minded gardener. Fall and winter are great times to plant in the Southeast, and Earth Mix can help you with Landscape Soil Conditioner. Mix Landscape with your native soil to feed all winter long. Added mycorrhizal fungi help your plants get established faster and increase hardiness through the year ahead. Visit earthmix.net for more information and retailers near you. Remember, success begins at the ground level when you use Earth Mix garden products.
Best time to transplant a crepe myrtle tree, probably about 5 feet tall right now.
All right.
When it's dormant completely would be the best time. Probably not quite yet.
Getting close, though.
Getting close. I would say.
And the height of it has no bearing on that. It's just a question of how large the root ball will be.
That and how old. Yeah, I wonder how old it is because crepe myrtles are notorious for being hard to dig. Oh, they are hard-wooded plants and strong roots.
And they are not the most transplant friendly. That's why that you see them almost exclusively, not entirely, but almost exclusively as a container grown plant because there's no transplant shock.
Right.
Now, the ones who do grow them in the field do a good job of root pruning, which really reduces the transplant shock.
Which is
greatly.
something you can do now if you want to. You can go out there with a spade and just make some, like you're going to dig, but don't dig. Just cut some of the roots. Not all of them or all the way around, really, but you're just trying to make it where smaller, more fibrous roots start to grow within that root ball.
Yeah, and a general rule of thumb, and it's more difficult to determine on a crepe myrtle because typically they are a multi-stem plant. So it's hard to say, what caliper is this plant? But generally, you want about 12 inches of root ball for every 1 inch of caliper in the trunk. So if you go down close to the ground, where all of them grow out together, you're not going to be able to say, well, that's, if it looks like it's 3 inches, it's probably more like 2 inches because there's just too many stems growing out. But that would give you a 24-inch root ball. And then if you could somehow go out 24 inches and do a 45-degree clean cut in, if you could do that.
I was about to say.
That's not easily done.
No.
But if you could do that,
You can do 42, you can do 45.
Well,
Come on,
it's easier said than done. So, I don't know.
38 and a half.
With a really small crepe myrtle, it's a whole lot easier than it would be with something of some size, and you're going to be encountering larger roots. And because of that, it's just going to be a difficult chore. So, don't expect transplanting a crepe myrtle to really ever be easy. I did one on the corner of my house in 2007 when I moved into it. It was about a 6 or 7 foot at the time Natchez crepe myrtle. Now it's 25 feet. And I dug a trench and drug it with my truck with a chain out the trench to get it away from the house. And it looked like it was enough at the time, and I still didn't pull it far. I didn't go far enough.
Hey, I'd just like to jump in and say, first of all, if you're tuned in today, thank you for watching.
Yes.
We are a live show right now. So while we're live, you can ask us questions, be it on
live?
Facebook or YouTube. I'm live.
Yeah.
Instagram.
Instagram as well. Josh is monitoring some channels. I am too. But we also have some questions that we already received on our Instagram. So thank you for joining us today.
Yes. And hey, I got to give a shout out. We had a guest come out yesterday, and she's probably watching today. You know who I'm talking about if you're listening, and I'm sure you are. You live in Murfreesboro. You were out here yesterday with a friend.
Is that Joni?
Was it Joni?
I think it's Joni.
I forget her name, but I'm sorry I forget your name. But you were out here yesterday. You gave us great feedback. You said you've been watching for, probably more than a decade. She was watching y'all, or listening to y'all long before this show ever happened. So she came out all the way from Murfreesboro yesterday, and shout out to you. Thank you for your kind words, and you were great to work with yesterday. We got you some boxwood. We got you some grasses. We even got you some golden junipers. I hope you got them set out and looking good. Thanks for coming out.
Yep.
Well, we try to encourage people to come out and see us, and we do think it's worth the drive from anywhere.
It is.
That's right.
County.
Even Murfreesboro.
Yeah, Rutherford County's great, man.
I'm going to get a jump on this next question here from Colin. He's got this photo that he submitted with chainsaw is ready for the myrtle on one side, But what in the world do I do with this?
It looks like a big Foster holly,
Looks like
doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
All right.
I kind of like the look of it. But
It looks good, yeah. I mean, but if it's like really on your home, I can't. This
Well,
light is.
Sorry.
it was your typical.
let me see if I can zoom in.
It looks like your typical Foster holly planted in 1995 or
Yeah.
something like that, where
On
it's
the
way
corner.
too close
oh,
to
it's
the
as
house.
tall as your house.
Well, they get
Taller
40
than-
foot tall.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do. And it was a bad thing to do back in the day to plant those hollies that close. Now, I will say, first things first is any pruning you do right now or anytime through this wintertime, you're going to see all of those pruning cuts until the spring. So a cleanup for me on that tree. Now, that tree just needs to be pruned severely. You might need to
Well,
get someone to.
I think the proper word is butchered.
Yeah, pretty much butchered.
Yeah.
It'll
But if
look
you
that
do-
way for a bit, but it's not. If you wait until, and I know where you're going with this, Austin, is
Yeah.
that wait until the end of winter or the
Yes.
very early part of spring, cut it severely.
Uh-huh.
And then at that point, you only have a few weeks to look at these sawed off looking stubs. It will come back out.
Oh, God,
You
a big
can
holly.
almost literally cut that to the ground,
Yes.
right?
You literally
Yes.
could, Josh. Yes. Or take it to like 6 feet and then shear it tight, But like David said, let's wait to do that because any cutting you do now, you're going to have to live with that through the whole winter. It's not growing right now. So let's give it a minute on that. In early spring, like I said, but 3 weeks before a flush would happen, prune it severely.
I mean, you've lived with it all these years.
years,
A couple more months is not really going to matter that
No,
much.
it's not. So good question. That's a beast though. That's going to be a job. Get ready. That's going to hurt you.
And how can how can I add height to short crepe myrtles? Can I leave an upward branch when trimming?
I think you just leave them alone.
Yeah, pretty much. You
Just
got to let them grow.
I mean, the problem with crepe myrtles is, especially with last year, is frequently they will freeze either to the ground or a certain amount,
down. Yeah.
undetermined. But so unless they are a very, very hardy variety like the indica, like David was talking about earlier,
Natchez,
the Natchez, but you can thin out if there's a lot of canes, you can thin them out and leave just a few, and that will help.
Yes.
So
And then don't cut them.
correct.
Yeah, don't cut the tall ones. Like Adam said, leave the ones you want to leave, probably the tallest ones if you want it to get tall, or prune the lower ones. And then, more energy will go towards, like, say, 3 stems instead of like 10. So you'll achieve height a little bit quicker if you do that.
Right.
That's the way to do it. And then you got to let them grow. Patience.
Additional support for Gardening Inside Out is brought to you by Bates Nursery and Garden Center, a third-generation nursery located in Nashville, Tennessee, and 20-time recipient for Nashville's Best Garden Center, offering the widest selection of new arrivals for fall, like specimen conifers, Japanese maples, and pansies in nearly every color. Open year-round, minutes from the heart of Nashville in beautiful Whites Creek, Tennessee. Browse their selection online anytime at batesnursery.com. Bates Nursery and Garden Center, beautifying Nashville since 1932.
Getting a lot of comments on how beautiful the set looks today.
Oh, good.
it is.
Hey,
It's
this
awesome.
side was all Caroline. So
Yeah,
shout out,
you did a
Caroline. I
great
hope you're
job.
feeling better. But this was all her. And really, this whole set pretty much was her. I only helped a little. I got caught with a customer.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it's so integrated today.
Yeah, Caroline's touch was all over this one. So,
All right, how should I trim Popstar hydrangeas?
hey, Popstar, that's cool. That's kind of a new one that came out
Yep.
this year. I was unaware of it. I think it's a Serrata. It might be a Macrophylla, but either way, you treat those two the same. And what I say is typically don't trim at all if you can help it. Like, really, you want to leave those stems up as much as you can. That gives you the most, it gives you
Buds.
the most buds to to deal with. So like if it does leaf out from the top in the early spring, then we have a stupid late frost like we typically do. It'll get those buds at the top, but then you can prune those off and you'll have secondary buds still along that stem. We got to have them leaf out from the stem so they bloom for you. It's an old wood bloomer. So leave it up as much as you can. I don't say trim it at all. Just leave it.
Yeah, I'm always curious how names are derived. Was there a specific pop star that was being thought of when they?
Tay hydrangea.
I don't know.
It's a beautiful plant, though.
Yeah.
There
It's
was
really
Nickelback that
sturdy,
came up with
stocky.
that song. Wasn't it Nickelback that did that song?
I want to be a rock star. I
Oh,
remember
same
that
thing.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
same thing.
Yeah.
Hey, Tyler.
Close. Yeah.
You got a picture you could throw
Oh,
up? I
yes,
need to
I
talk
do.
about real
yeah,
quick.
exactly.
I got. We don't have what's in bloom anymore. What we have is
Although we got a lot of blooming stuff.
we do. Hey,
yeah.
camellias.
Blooming party, man.
Most camellias around town though ain't gonna bloom this year because of last year's freeze. I
What
know
are we
mine
looking
aren't.
at? What are we looking at here?
All right, let's
There
look.
we go.
Oh, look, there's my house. This was earlier in the year, and that's my tree form ginkgo. And this is right whenever I planted pansies beneath them, which I always love to do. Right behind them is my all gold juniper that I love. They're great. That's 3 little 1 gallons planted, and they really grew.
Now,
I've
isn't
had to
that
prune them.
that's similar?
You mean they're not competing with each other?
No, they're not. They're just living amongst each other,
When
like
was-
Adam said.
When was this picture taken?
And then look
the
at
trauma.
that. So yeah, that picture was taken a month ago, probably when the ginkgo was still beautiful green, not even thinking about going yellow. And why do we grow ginkgo? We grow ginkgo because it's got
Fall
interesting
color.
foliage, but it's got excellent fall foliage. And you know what? We had that stupid freeze last week when the plant was just green as can
Suffering
be,
succotash.
and then that freeze and frost turned it to mush.
Yeah.
They're mush, people. No yellow color
Hey,
at all.
Austin, that looks small enough that I mean, you probably could have put some kind of sheet over it.
I
maybe, to
probably
protect
could
it.
have. I didn't even think
Oh
about
my
it, Adam.
gosh.
I was moving my rows in and out. I wasn't even thinking about the ginkgo.
He's still got stuff in pots from 2 years ago that he hadn't planted. You know?
Exactly. But
Slow your
that-
roll, Adam.
But that one, how annoying is this? And the funny thing is, horticulturally, let's talk about this, us professionals. That ginkgos, we all know, is like they go brilliant yellow, and
They
then
fall
one
all at
decides to drop, and then they all drop
Yes.
pretty much. It's a very quick drop.
Yes.
Well, mine is super annoying because it got mushy. All those leaves
And
are
they're gonna hang
still,
on.
and they're hanging on.
Yeah.
They're not dropping. This has been. I mean, this was what we had the freeze last Tuesday. They're still
Monday,
on.
Tuesday.
Like
Well-
it's not. They're not falling off. What is up with this?
Now, I'll give you a pass this time, Austin. But if you have the same instance next year, it's all on you, man.
You're right. I know.
You should know to put a sheet
now,
over.
now
it.
what,
should've.
What cultivar of ginkgo is that?
American.
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 Yes, it's not spelled like American. It's just a weird spelling.
MERIKEN.
Yes, that is
American.
right. And it's typically like a shrub form ginkgo, which is cool in like a rock garden conifer scene.
That's on a high graft.
Yes, and that one's on a high graft. Our good friend Andy that works with us, he actually bought that from me a few years ago, like 3 years ago now, in a little 1 gallon. And
Oh, wow.
it's grown and been great, and I love it. It's the perfect little feature for entering my bed. Like, I love it. Little
Austin,
tree form.
If you really loved it, you would have covered it.
Adam! I wasn't thinking about it,
Hey,
man.
that's so that people understand when we say high graft, what are we talking about? Because you know, people think, well, it's grafted. That means it's like at the ground or whatever.
Like
Not
a
necessarily,
rose.
right?
No, yeah, they graft this one atop of the seeds. More or less, y'all, a bush on a stick. Okay? That's just
Okay.
a grand horticultural term.
I think
Yep.
it is. Yeah,
You know
I
what the
saw it in
root
the
Look how
stock
text.
is?
sad that is. Look how stupid that is.
Hey, aren't those pansies competing with each other?
Yeah. Those pansies are great, actually. They've
That's
been
probably
fine.
what got his boxwoods. He had too many.
You know,
of
but look,
them.
look how good they still look, and they
Yeah.
went through the same cold weather. It
Yeah.
just barely phased them, and they probably look much better today.
They do. They
I
look
was
good
gonna
this
say
morning.
they probably liked it.
Yeah.
Actually.
Oh, they were fine with it. Yeah, they were fine. They're throwing blooms like crazy. I had a great pansy. Even last year through the December freeze, my pansies were money. They look great throughout the whole season.
Yeah, but you got them in early though.
I got them in
That's-
early.
That's the key.
Yes, I got them in early. They had a time to establish.
We
A lot of
just-
people lost pansies last year.
we
I
just
did.
preach it and preach it. That's all we can do.
That's right.
Get 'em
Yeah.
in
So there you
early.
go. There's my ginkgo drama.
Well, that was great because we needed to see that.
Yes.
We need to
I'm
see
glad
your
y'all saw
flailing
that.
plants.
Uh-huh.
Best time to prune flowering almond.
That is one.
almond.
That is one. Actually, it's kind of the inverse. There are a few plants that we sell that actually don't like the summers here, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
It's so humid and hot here for so long that they don't do as well. Now they do bloom really early,
Yeah.
so I think, like Austin was saying, don't prune them if you can. But if you do have to, make sure you prune them kind of the beginning of the summer so they have time to flush out some more new growth.
right after they flower.
after they bloom,
Yeah.
yeah.
And as a clue to people who have anything that's in bloom, generally speaking, right after it blooms is the time when you trim anything. Now, if it doesn't apply to fruiting plants, otherwise you won't ever have fruit. But if it's just an ornamental plant for flowering, if you trim it right after it flowers, you can do so safely without interrupting the blooming cycle.
Because when a flowering almond blooms and it is happy around here, it's a beautiful little
Yep.
plant. I mean, they're really soft pink blooms and they really load up with blooms. But
Well, things like forsythia, for instance, if you cut them severely right after they flower, they'll return all this new growth because they flower on the previous year's wood. So the new growth and then don't trim them anymore. Let those long arching stems grow out, and then you'll have end-to-end flowers on those the next spring. So you really does a lot to predictively control how much color you're going to get out of something based on when you trim it and how you trim it.
Hot off the press on
Okay.
YouTube. Jane, can mushroom compost be used for seed starting?
I would say not because
it's kind of-
I think it's going to stay too wet. It's really
And it's still a little hot.
yeah.
a little hot and it stinks. Yuck, it stinks.
Well, I don't think the seed are offended by the smell.
don't care.
I know, and when I say it's
Gardening is stinky
hot,
work.
when I say it's hot, that what I'm referring to is that it's still an active decomposition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it were really old mushroom compost that had completely fixated nitrogen and was no longer generating heat, it might still be too fertile. You know, seed don't need fertilizer when they're germinating. They just need moisture and warmth. They don't even need sunlight when they're germinating.
No.
They're
So-
under the ground, so they don't care. Can't
Right.
see the sun anyway.
Organics eye would be the best.
That's what I love
Yes.
starting
Yeah.
seeds in.
I do, but I do with the coconut core mixed. About 50-50.
That's fine, too.
That's what I
There
did
you
last
go.
year.
That
Well,
works.
and given that it already has coconut core in it,
Yeah.
then you're just making it.
A little bit more corey.
What I will say is that we appreciate you tuning in
Yes.
today.
Yes.
We'd love for you to subscribe to what we're doing,
Yes.
and if you care to like it. And what that does is that helps to get us out to more households and to more individuals who have interest in gardening. We really want to connect with everyone we possibly can.
Yes.
So do that, and we thank you for that. We'll continue to try to give you the very best and most informative
You too.
and perhaps entertaining gardening information on the
Hopefully.
web.
We'll have some
Gardening
fun.
Inside Out.
Yep.
And we hope you have a great holiday, Thanksgiving.
Yes. Happy
Wherever you're
Thanksgiving.
traveling, be safe.
travel safe.
Eat a lot.
Don't drink too much and drive.
Don't
Don't
know.
do stupid.
The
Okay.
tryptophan in driving is marginal.
Yes, I mean you're going to be sleepy, so that.
If you're doing any planting, do it before you eat so you can work up a big appetite.
There you go.
All right.
We'll see you next week.
All right,
Yeah.
guys. See you.